The box was not supposed to be opened. It sat on the top shelf of a council storeroom for decades, wrapped in brown paper, tied with string that had fused into the cardboard. Someone had penciled a single word on the side long ago. Negatives. No date, no name, just that. When a junior archivist finally lifted it down in the early 2000s, the box nearly fell apart in her hands. Inside, there were stacks of old glass plates, each one wrapped in tissue gone almost translucent with age. She unwrapped the first plate. A child stared back at her. A little boy, no more than 4. Curly hair, neatly parted. A white lace collar. He was sitting upright in a chair, hands folded in his lap. But something was wrong. The eyes were not quite right. Too flat, the skin too pale, the lips too slack. She put that plate aside and unwrapped another. A girl this time in a christening gown, laid carefully on a pillow, eyelids shut, flowers arranged around her head like a crown. The next, and the next. Within an hour, a table meant for boxed council minutes was covered edge to edge with grainy, fading images of children. Dozens of them, then scores. By the time she was finished, she had counted 216 plates. Every single one was a photograph of a dead child. Not one plate showed a living child. No birthdays, no school portraits, no family groups with children standing awkwardly at the front. Just rows and rows of post-mortem images carefully composed in the style of the 1870s and 1880s. On the corner of many plates, scratched delicately into the emulsion, was the same set of initials, E.H., and on the underside of the box lid, in faded ink, a name. Edwin Harrow, photographic artist, 1870 to 1895. Within days, as more plates were scanned and cross-checked with old business directories and coroner's reports, a pattern emerged. From roughly 1870 until 1985, in one Midlands town, there was a photographer who accepted commissions only to photograph dead children. He never took a single known portrait of a living child. And then suddenly, in the middle of the 1890s, he vanished. No retirement notice, no gravestone, no forwarding address in the trade listings, just silence. Until, years later, his body was found in an abandoned house on the edge of town, surrounded by photographs. This is the story of the photographer who only shot dead children and then disappeared. Welcome to Veins of Darkness. To understand how anyone could build a career like Edwin Harrow's, we need to understand the world that created him. The year is 1870. Queen Victoria has been on the throne for more than 30 years. The country is crowded with factories, railways, and children. So many children. In the census of 1871, more than 1/3 of the population of England and Wales is under 15. But childhood is not a safe category. Infectious diseases run through poor neighborhoods like fire. Measles, scarlet fever, diphtheria, or summer diarrhea. In industrial towns, factory accidents and horse-drawn traffic add blunt trauma to the list. By the age of 5, as many as 1 in 4 children in some districts will be dead.
Victorian families lived with death in a way that's hard for us to imagine. They sew mourning clothes as a matter of course. They keep little boxes of baby hair, scraps of cloth, first shoes, and where they can afford it, they photograph their dead. Post-mortem photography could be heartbreaking, but it was rarely seen as morbid by the people who commissioned it. For many, it was the only chance they would ever have to hold a likeness of their child. Photographers would come to the house, The body would be arranged carefully, in a crib, on a chair, sometimes in a parent's lap. The child might be posed as if sleeping, or even, more controversially, propped upright as if alive. Most studios did this work occasionally, as part of a broader business: weddings, street scenes, soldiers heading off to war. Edwin Horrow was different. He made death his specialty. The first trace we have of him is a small advertisement in a local newspaper from 1871. E. Harrow, photographic artist, High Street, offers likenesses from life or from the deceased, children a particular study, gentle and respectful attention to bereaved families. At first glance, it is simply one more studio competing for business. But over the next 2 decades, similar adverts appear again and again. The wording shifts. By 1875, the "from life" part has disappeared. E. Harrow, photographer, respectfully offers memorial portraits of departed children taken in their own homes, special skill with infants and young persons. In the trade directories of the time, he is listed under photographers, but next to his name, unlike his competitors, there is often a single word in parentheses: mourning. When archivists began comparing the addresses on death certificates with the notes scratched into Harrow's plates, a stark pattern emerged. From 1872 to 1894, whenever a child under the age of 12 died within a certain radius of the town center, there was a significant chance that within a day or two, Edwin Harrow or one of his assistants had been there with a camera. 216 plates survived in that one box. Early business ledgers rescued from a demolished building suggest the real number was much higher. At least 400 separate commissions over 25 years, and not a single confirmed studio portrait of a living child with his name attached. He photographed adults in life. There are conventional cartes de visite of middle-aged couples and solemn clerks bearing his imprint. He photographed shop fronts, bridges, even a visiting circus. But when it came to children, his lens only seems to have turned to them after they had stopped breathing. Why? The bare outline of Harrow's life is easy to sketch. He appears in the 1861 census as a 19-year-old artist assistant lodging above a chemist's shop. A decade later, he's listed as a photographic artist on High Street. He never marries. He shares a house and sometimes a studio with a widowed older sister, Jane, and her son. In 1869, 2 years before his first advertisement, Jane's little boy, Harrow's nephew, dies. The death certificate records the cause as scarlet fever. The child's age, 3 years, 2 months. Attached to the entry is an unusual note from the registrar. Body photographed by uncle 2 days after decease at mother's request. Among the glass plates in the box, one stands out even to untrained eyes. A toddler boy lies on a daybed, propped slightly upright with pillows. He wears a white gown. A doll rests beside him. Someone has placed a small sprig of flowers in his right hand. The composition is gentler than many of Harrow's later work. The light is soft. The child's face is pale but still rounded with baby fat. There is no attempt to paint the eyes open, no awkward brace. He looks, to modernize, at peace. On the corner of that plate, unlike the others, Harrow has scratched more than initials. He has written a name.
We do not know for certain what role this first family tragedy played in shaping his career, but the timing is suggestive. Before Freddie's death, Edwin is simply an assistant, helping with generic portraits. Within 2 years, what role this first family tragedy played in shaping his career, but the timing is suggestive. Before Freddie's death, Edwin is simply an assistant, helping with generic portraits. Within 2 years, he has his own practice, and is advertising an unusual, particular study of deceased children. It is not hard to imagine a man who, in the aftermath of personal loss, discovered both a technical niche and an emotional compulsion. Perhaps the first post-mortem portrait he made was for his sister. Perhaps she, in her grief, told other mothers that Edwin can make you a beautiful likeness. He did so for my Freddie. Word spreads, and soon, when a child dies within range of High Street, there is a name families know to call. The plates in the box cover a quarter century. Laid out in chronological order, they tell a terrible story of repetition. An infant wrapped tightly, as if swaddled for sleep, in 1873. Twin boys in matching gowns, arranged symmetrically on a fringed chaise longue, 1876. A little girl propped in a chair in 1882, her drooping head held in place by a support stand hidden behind her hair, a doll sitting upright on the floor beside her. 3 barefoot siblings, the elder 2 alive, standing on either side of a low crib where their sister lies still. 1889. In every plate, there is a strange, constrained tenderness in the way Harrow has framed the children. He chooses the best corner of the house, the least damaged wall. He opens as much of the curtain as he can. He removes clutter from the frame. When he can, he rests a parent's hand lightly on a child's shoulder, or lets a surviving sibling's fingers just touch the edge of the sheet. But he almost never includes adult faces. It is as if he wants the image to be all about the child, without the distraction of grown-up grief. Technically, the photographs are competent, sometimes beautiful. Emotionally, seeing them all at once is overwhelming. This is the first time in the archive that anyone has. Harrow's original clients would have seen 1 portrait, maybe 2, their own small tragedy. We, looking back, see hundreds. And we see another pattern. On many of the plates, the back of the glass carries a penciled note, the child's name, age, and cause of death. Emily, 6, scarlet fever. John, 8 months, convulsions. Sarah, 3, fall from cart. Here and there, though, Harrow has written something else. Next to the ordinary formula, he has occasionally added a phrase. Beautiful child, mother wept much. Did not seem to wish to be moved. Third from same house this year. And under 1 plate from 1881, eyes would not close. The accompanying image shows a boy of about 5. His eyelids are, in fact, closed, but someone has clearly drawn darker arcs on the print afterward to suggest a more natural line. The note suggests that, in life, something about those eyes disturbed Harrow enough that he needed to comment.
When you handle this many images of death, you begin to see them less as individual tragedies and more as a kind of oppressive weather system. What does that do to the person behind the camera? We have small glimpses. In 1884, a rival photographer writes an angry letter to the local paper, complaining that Harrow is trading upon bereavement and seeking to make a morbid profit by inserting handbills at every house where a child is laid out. We don't know if that accusation is fair. There is no surviving handbill. In Harrow's own notebook, a slim leather-bound volume found with the plates, there are no confessions of exploitation, no note of greed. What we have instead are brief, sometimes almost clinical, jottings. Mrs. L. sang to the infant while I worked. Strange effect. Very small casket, white. Child looked as though about to stir. But as the years go on, another tone creeps in. Too many of late. Dreamed I was arranging flowers, but they would not stay fresh. Cannot forget the sound of the mother on the stairs. These are not the words of a man entirely at ease with his trade. Local gossip, recorded in a 1920s oral history, paints him as a quiet, gray sort of fellow who walked with his head down and avoided the park on bright days. A shopkeeper's grandson remembers being told, "Mr. Harrow doesn't take pictures of children with their eyes open, only after God has shut them." Is that true? Strictly speaking, no. There is at least one surviving plate of a live child Harrow took as part of a larger family group. But what people believe about you can matter more than the facts. By the early 1990s, some parents with sick children reportedly refused to let him near the house for fear of tempting fate. And yet his services remained in demand. Because when the worst did happen, when a small body lay in a back room, cooling on a borrowed crib, there was comfort, for some, in knowing there was a man in High Street who knew exactly what to do with a camera and a corpse. Until, in 1895, he disappeared. The last dated plate in the box is from March 1895. A boy named Albert, 10, pneumonia, is shown lying in his Sunday suit, hands folded. After that, there are no more. Harrow's business listing in the 1896 trade directory is blank. Where E. Harrow, photographic artist, High Street, had appeared the previous year, there is now nothing but white space. The building he had worked in was sold. A tailor moved in to the ground floor. The studio upstairs was turned into storage. For a time, odd plates and prints seemed to circulate, a mother bringing in a damaged card for reprinting, an undertaker dropping off unpaid bills, but eventually even those traces thinned. Someone boxed up the remaining glass plates and left them in a back room. When the building was renovated in the mid-20th century, the cluttered room was cleared and the box sent to the municipal archives with the vague label, "Old Negatives." Edwin Harrow, the photographer, as a public figure, had vanished. Officially. Unofficially, the story is darker. In a police record from 1902, an entry appears under "Unidentified Deceased, Male." A man approximately 60 years old found dead in a derelict cottage on the edge of town. Cause of death: exposure and debility. Circumstances: squatting, alone, no family claiming the body. No name is given. But among the few possessions listed as found at the scene, there is a telling detail. Case containing photographic plates, images of children, one small card inscribed Freddie H. The description of the plates matches the style of Harrow's early work. Freddie is the name on his nephew's plate. Archivists and historians now believe that the unidentified man in the report was almost certainly Edwin Harrow. If so, he died far from High Street, in a crumbling cottage near an overgrown churchyard, with only his dead children for company. How he got from one point to the other, from a well-known, if controversial, town photographer to a nameless vagrant dying of cold, We can only guess. Somewhere between 1895 and 1902, something broke. Perhaps it was simply age, poverty, competition. New studios opened with brighter windows and newer equipment. Families might have shifted their business to more cheerful operators. Or perhaps years of handling the dead, especially the small dead, took a toll that Harrow could no longer bear. There is one last hint in his notebook. On the final page, in fainter, shakier handwriting, he has copied out a verse from the book of Job. "The eye of him that hath seen me shall see me no more. Thine eyes are upon me, and I am not." Underneath, in what looks like an addition, he writes, "No more children." We do not know if that resolution he kept. We do know that no more children's plates dated after that year have his initials.
So, who was Edwin Harrow? Was he a ghoul, making a living from the grief of others? Or was he a craftsman, offering a service no one else wanted to specialize in, filling a need created by a world where coffins the size of bread boxes were a standard stock item? The answer is probably both, and neither. Victorian mourning culture was complicated. On the one hand, there were strict rules: how long to wear black, when to re-enter society, what was considered tasteful in memorial art. On the other, there was a marketplace of grief, with tradesmen ready to sell you mourning stationery, jet jewelry, black-edged calling cards, and in memoriam photographs for a price. Harrow found a niche within that market and for 25 years occupied it. His images, seen individually, are tender, even loving. Seen collectively, they shatter. For modern viewers, they raise uncomfortable questions. When does recording reality become exploitation? At what point does repeated exposure to death, especially the deaths of children, start to bend a person's mind? There are hints in the notes and the few secondhand testimonies that Harrow began to feel haunted by his own work. Dreams of wilting flowers, of children who would not stay arranged. But there is no grand confession, no sensational newspaper story about a mad photographer, just a slow fade out from the historical record and the silent testimony of glass. In the end, the strangest thing about Edwin Harrow may not be that he only photographed dead children. It may be that in a world where so many children died, no one at the time found that strange enough to record in more than a handful of lines. It took us, more than a century later, unwrapping a forgotten box and laying out all his work at once, to see the shape of his obsession. 216 little faces. 216 small stories that ended too soon. And behind each, the steady eye of the same man doing the same job again and again until he couldn't. Somewhere in those plates, if you look long enough, you can almost feel the moment when the work stopped being a duty and became a weight he couldn't set down. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of the strangest corners of Victorian photography. If this story has made you look differently at old portraits, if you find yourself wondering now who was behind the camera and what it cost them, subscribe to Veins of Darkness for more investigations into history's darkest medical and photographic mysteries. Until the next macabre tale, stay curious about the darkness.